All right, so we're going to talk about child investing specifically, and I think this is a great topic. Obviously, this is going to apply to every single person, but maybe at some point in time. So we are going to cover every single avenue of child investing. First things first are the 5 different typical vehicles. There's other strategic ways like rental properties and things of that nature, but typically when people are talking about investing for kids, this is kind of what it comes down to. You have a 529 college savings plan, a Coverdell educational savings account, an UGMA or UPMA, a Roth IRA potentially, and then also a taxable brokerage. And so I'm going to talk about how we use it for Logan, as well as just in general, the options out there. So first things first is education. So when we break apart the different components of child investing, there are education and maybe there's other. I would say it's probably the 2 pieces of or ways that we want to look at this. So number 1 is education. We want to talk about 529s and Coverdell ESAs. These 2 accounts are fantastic. If you are trying to save for a child, let's say that's going to go to college or you expect to go to college or even K through 12, there's some flexibility there as well to use this. These are the 2 accounts you want to look at. Now, in general, I favor the 529. I think there's a lot more flexibility. It makes more sense, but the Coverdell ESA is definitely an available account that you guys can use as well. So the similarities and differences between these 2 accounts. Number 1 is they're both used for education. So if I want to save for my child's education and I'm thinking about accounts, I'm not going to use a taxable brokerage account. And I'm also not going to use maybe an UGMA or UPMA. I want it to be specifically for this because of the tax benefits and the tax advantage account that both of these present with that tax-free growth and qualified withdrawals for those specific higher educational expenses. Additionally, these can be transferred to siblings. And there are updates in current law that aren't actually passed. It's a proposal, but they can potentially be rolled into a parent IRA. That's not official as of now when I'm presenting on this, but a 529, if unused funds go, most people used to say, hey, I'm going to transfer this to a sibling or grandchildren or something along the lines of that, maybe a generation skipping transfer trust. And instead what they're doing is now they could potentially roll that money just into a retirement account of the parent that's saved for their kids, which makes a lot of sense. So hopefully Congress can push that proposal through and it helps everybody out. But as of now, that's not official. So the differences between the ESA and the 529 is pretty much the contribution limit. So ESA only has $2,000 per year that you can put in. The 529 is, I put here, extremely high contribution limit because it's not going to be a factor. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the state. And of course you can look it up by state, but I don't think anybody is going to be running into an issue when you're saving for college, because again, a lot of the growth is, or a lot of the account value is in growth of time in the market and investing and stuff of that nature. Contributions, I don't think anybody has a need to put 250,000 plus into one of these accounts. So that shouldn't be an issue. The ESA and the 529, the other kind of quirky difference here is once the beneficiary turns 18, there's no more contributions for the ESA. With a 529, there's no rule that exists. Now, when most children are going to go to college at 18 years old, most parents are going to have a conservative account that at that point in time, they start pulling from, throwing to the tuition bill or the books or the room and board, whatever cost they want to pay. They're usually not going to leave it into the market longer than that. But the cool thing about this is the reason it doesn't really exist. Some parents let their money ride for the whole 4 years, take out loans, pay them off after. But the other thing is you can transfer the person on the 529. So before I even had Logan, she was still in the womb. We actually started the 529. It was in my name. So it was a way for us to start investing for her college or higher education, K through 12, even if I wanted, and get that money rolling. But then also at birth, we just switched the social security number to hers once she got that social number. So that is one of the benefits of the 529. Additionally, if you do withdraw at this point in time early, there is a 10% penalty. So be aware, don't load this thing up with no intention of going to college or, thinking of different ways people would withdraw or what for whatever reason. Just don't overfund this. And I'm going to walk you through the example that Logan we used for Logan, and kind of exactly I'm going to pinpoint how we got to the numbers that we got to a little later in this presentation. So some resources, and we're going to come back to these as we walk through her specific situation. And I'll have these saved for you as well, so you guys can use these. But state tax deductions, remember, every 529, not every 529 has a state tax deduction. There's 7 states in particular, mine being one in Kentucky, not to have a state tax deduction. So in that situation, it's honestly doesn't matter where I open one at. So I opened one up at Vanguard, which is actually the state of Nevada. If you're one of those 7 states, and you can check on this list, I would just go with the best possible state plan, whether through investment options. Ohio, New York are 2 of the top 5 I typically see every single year. So I wouldn't go to, I don't know, Montana, if Montana has a horrible one and your state doesn't have that tax deduction. You can also, even if it doesn't have its tax deduction, I could use Kentucky's 529, but I know, obviously you guys know I'm a Vanguard guy. And so I'm going to keep all my investments there. So I might as well just roll with Vanguard's fund anyway, since I don't get that deduction. College cost calculator. This is a tremendous tool I'll walk you through as well. And this is just kind of planning out exactly how much you're going to need to the T. Of course, life happens and things change, but it's a great tool to predict kind of what that monthly payment that you need to make or investment you need to make for your child. And then a compound interest calculator always comes into play. That's always important to think about for other investment opportunities for your children as well. So if you don't want to do education, or you're like, hey, I've done education, but I want to also think about other things outside of education, an account that comes to mind is the UGMA or UPMA. So Uniform Gift to Minors Act or Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. So the similarities between these and differences, they're very, very similar. It's a custodial account in the name of minor. So technically speaking, any account that you open, a bank account or anything, is considered an UGMA or UPMA. Now, typically when people are saying this, they're referring to an investment account. Through my business, I have a bank account or Logan's name, and she has a high yield savings account, and I transfer money into that account so it counts as income when she does her baby modeling through my business. So therefore, there's a track record of where I paid her, and that money then goes right to the IRA. So that transaction, the only reason I have that open is for proof, right? That's considered an UGMA. We do not have an UGMA or UPMA outside of that simple bank account. That bank account balance is always pretty much zero. It's kind of a sweep account. So we put money in there for my business that I pay her. Technically speaking, we record everything. There's a transaction to go along with that recording, and then we just transfer that into the IRA. Simple as that. This account becomes the minors at age 18. This is a huge problem for a lot of parents. And so at 18, their kid gets this money. If there's $100,000 in their account and the kid is not in line with what the parents, believe or, went off the deep end, they still get $100,000. And so that scares a lot of parents. And so pre-2018, before the tax law changed, there was a big benefit from a tax standpoint with the UGMA and UPMA. The first 1,050, that number changes every year, but the first 1,050 was tax-free. The next 1,050 was at the kiddie tax rate, which is extremely cheap. And then over and above that, gains would be at the regular rates. So a lot of people thought from a tax standpoint, you know what, this makes sense. But the problem is you give up control in the meantime. And so we'll get into another account as kind of an alternative here in a second. The other thing here is there's a $16,000 per year contribution limit. That's the gift tax exclusion number in 2022. That will change as well. That kind of goes up with time, just like the IRAs and the 401ks and every other limit the IRS kind of puts their caps on. And then the difference between the UGMA and UPMA here, the UGMA is pretty simple. It's just securities. The UPMA is securities, real estate, fine art, patents, and royalties. So think of the UGMA as like regular stocks and bonds, maybe life insurance. And then UPMA is kind of more fancy, kind of one step up from that. So the question I often get is, what should I pick, 529 UGMA or UPMA? I think both might make sense, okay? So I don't think that either one is a problem. There's pros and cons that we walked through a second ago. You could overfund a 529 and get a 10% penalty, but you also could overfund an UGMA and your kid isn't in line with you at 16 or 18 years old, and you have to give them that money regardless. It also reduces your financial aid by a specific percentage. I have listed down here 5.64 for 529s and 20 to 25% for UGMAs and UPMAs. So if you are trying to save for college, it makes more sense to go 529 route versus UGMA UPMA, because the financial aid impact, it's going to hurt you if you go UGMA UPMA route. Also the tax benefits on top of that. But this is to kind of give you some more insight into this. Any financial assets established in custodial accounts are a big red flag for colleges deliberating over financial aid to a student. So the more assets that a kid has in their name, the worse opportunity they have for financial aid. So 529 is probably ideal, but even parental assets are better at times than like an UGMA or an UPMA. So parental cash held in a state college 529 planner an education savings account weighs less than a custodial account in a child's name, which is crazy. You wouldn't think that, because even if a kid has $50,000, could they really afford a full college? Are they better off than a parent? I don't know. I don't make the rules, but that's just what it is. So that's a financial aid impact you want to be aware of, and why you typically would lean 529 for school in particular. So then I got into this Roth IRA. I was kind of briefly mentioning this earlier. And so didn't you say a Roth IRA could be used for my child too? Yes. The simple answer is yes. And it is the biggest hack there is. So the first requirement and the only requirement is it has to be earned income. I cannot pay Logan and just start investing and max out an IRA every single year. She, technically speaking, I know she doesn't work too hard and she complains and throws food at me, but she does earn income through my business through baby modeling. That's a very rare thing that you can do. I happen to have my own business that happens to be online, and I happen to have a kid that kind of fits my brand, and I make it work. I do not pay her a ton of money. I pay her a reasonable wage, which is $50 an hour. The way I got to that number was I went to online and I checked what do baby models make. And it was like $25 an hour to like $150 if you're like a Gerber baby model, which she's not. So I kind of lean to the more conservative side. I also record every single hour that she's working or taking pictures for the brand. And I record that, how much I paid her per hour and what it was for and what the date was. So I know all that. And that's in a simple Excel tracking thing. The question I get a lot from parents is like, hey, does chore money count? Can I like help my kid, give her some chores to take out trash and do the laundry and things of that nature, pay her $10 and invest it? The answer is no, you cannot do that. I do highly recommend, I have a very creative way through side hustles, essentially, of how you could pay your kid tax-free up to $12,950 in 2022. It's titled that. So it's on my YouTube page. I highly recommend it. And I'll add it here as well. But $12,950 comes from the standard deduction from a single filer. That numbers will change with time, which is why I say 2022. But if you have a side hustle and your child is operating within that side hustle and helping you, whether that's Rover or something legitimate, you can actually get around this rule and give them earned income to an extent, kind of work the system to a certain degree. Now, again, you don't want to push the limits, but as long as they have a reasonable job, a reasonable duty, and they're making income, you can invest that directly into an IRA. The other account that you can work with a child is a taxable brokerage. And this is the most, I would say, flexible account, which is why I say complete flexibility here. It can be opened through any brokerage institution, and your account goals can greatly vary. So the savings greater than 5 years is typically why people use this. Also early retirement. But another way that my wife and I use it is for Logan. And so we opened a taxable brokerage in our name. So it's not even in Logan's name. And so when we were applying for Medicaid and we were looking into, hiding her assets through a trust, the brokerage account never became an issue because it was in our name and it was out of her name. So we didn't have to hide any of that income that she had or account investment balance. So the only thing you have to know here is the tax consequence. So we technically can gift it to her at $16,000 per year, which is the annual gift tax exclusion. Totally get away with it from a tax standpoint and do that every single year. Now we are married, so we can do 32, which is times 2 of 16, obviously. And there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. Now, the tax consequence of this, let's say we gift it to her and she has her income, right? And she has her investment balance sitting there. And let's say there's $1,000 after tax money deposited, right? And it earns $500. And that account sits at an even 1,500, right? So if I were to cash out, and this is general, there's a lot of nuance to this tax and capital gains. But if she was to cash out, capital gains of 15% would be applied to that $500 in gains. Therefore, that'd be about $75. And so the money that would be taken away from the account in total would be $1,425, $1,500 minus 75. Now, there's short-term and long-term capital gains. Also, the income that you receive, is it dividend or is it capital appreciation or even from a bond interest income and things of that nature? So a little bit of nuance, but generally for most people, this is kind of the situation from a tax standpoint. We love the brokerage account for many different reasons. So the gift tax implications we've been referring to, you have annual gift tax exclusion, which is $16,000 per spouse. And then you have the lifetime gift tax exclusion, which is like literally 12 million plus. Okay. I'll give you some background on each one. So annual gift tax exclusion has been kind of relatively in the same ballpark, slowly going up with time, kind of the same rule behind everything, but each spouse is allowed to gift up to $16,000 per year per gift in 2022, up to an unlimited amount of gifts. So if I had 95 kids in front of me, I could give each one of them $16,000, or my wife and I could both do that totally tax-free. And this can include a gift to your child, which is where this comes into play with the taxable brokerage. So if you invest in that brokerage account, you'll be able to gift up to this amount to your child every single year without a tax consequence. And so that's a huge benefit. And so if I amass, let's say $100,000 in this brokerage account for her, or 120, I invest $250 per month, and I go above that amount and I'm like, wow, I have $100,000. I don't know how I'm going to be able to gift it to her all at once because this isn't, obviously per year type of deal. I could do one of two things. I could either do a $16,000 or $32,000, depending on married or single, per year gift, or what I could do is just push it towards the lifetime gift tax exclusion. Now, if you want to gift over and above this exclusion amount, the remaining portion, let's say you're married, your amount's 32, and you give them 35, so 3,000 over and above that. That's the remaining portion here. That can go towards your lifetime gift tax exclusion, and this could impact your estate taxes at death. In fact, it will. It will go against that 12 million. Now, depending on how big that amount is, it might not matter. You're going to have to file Form 709, obviously get with a good CPA to do this. This lifetime gift tax exclusion has changed throughout the years pretty substantially. It has not been like the annual one. This, with Trump's tax law, doubled, just like the standard deduction did and all that stuff. So before he came into office, it was a lot less. And so if you do have a pretty big estate at death and you start pushing all this stuff and the IRS does change these limits, you could run a pretty high tax bill. Of course, there's other tax strategy to get around that, but that would be going directly against that. You can do it legally. It's fine, Form 709, but just be aware if you do go above and beyond that amount. So let's talk about Logan's investment plan, and then I'll walk actually through step by step using the tools I showed earlier. So this is obviously a tweet before she was here. Our daughter will be here in a couple of weeks. Here are the investment accounts we plan to use to invest. So we are using the 529, I call it the parent taxable brokerage, just a brokerage name and a brokerage in our name, and then a Roth IRA. So here's why. And so when we were actually planning to invest for her, we considered a few things, right? What's the goal of the money? Which accounts would help achieve those goals? How much money does she actually need to have when she's 18? And so we thought through those and we kind of came up with a game plan, right? So we began with the 529. We knew that was our first account we wanted to cover for her through school of some sort, whether that's K through 12 or higher education. And so while having a college fund is important, we also knew there's a chance that she does not go to college, which is obviously a bigger chance at this point in time since her diagnosis. So we're definitely very well aware of that at this point in time, but also receiving scholarships or even owning her own business where she just doesn't go. So we think also college might look a lot different. I do think any 529 assets will be grandfathered in. It won't be hit with a massive penalty if you withdraw, if things do change drastically over the last, next 18 years or so. I think Congress, like I said earlier, is looking to a proposal in moving 529 assets into parental IRAs. So I think they're already kind of projecting out what could potentially happen and giving outs for the 529. So we definitely are aware of all these types of things and constantly monitoring all of that stuff. So initially, we decided to invest $250 per month because she has a high chance of going to college at that point in time. And I hope the case still remains. But this would fund approximately 62% of a 4-year in-state public school. So I'm going to show you how I got to that through my tool in a second. But our goal is not to overfund that 529. One, we expect her to work hard and get a lot of scholarships. But two, we think she should also work, right? And so to account for the 38% other of that 4-year state in school. Now, of course, she could go out of state and decide to go to Ohio State or Clemson or Florida State. And that's not what we are planning for. So we're pretty reasonable about this. And we're saying 4-year in-state school, we will pay for at least a pretty high portion of it. So scholarship, work during college, or maybe the parent taxable brokerage. If she decides to go to a state, she doesn't get any of those things. She has 38% she's on the hook for. Well, the other brokerage account might take care of that. So if we actually did overfund that 529, we could always pass to another child, which we plan to have, or future grandchildren. However, we do want it separate. But like I said, the proposal hopefully here soon is going to take care of that. So the parent taxable brokerage is the second account. And so we chose this over the UTMA due to two factors: the math, which we ran the calculations in the past with the kiddie tax, and remember the 1,050 tax-free plus the kiddie tax, the next 1,050 plus over and above that. And we did a little scenario based on new tax law. It pretty much comes out to a wash. The brokerage actually was kind of in favor, but regardless, the bigger component of this is the control. I do not want $75,000, $100,000 in an 18-year-old's hand without my control. So that's just my preference. Everyone's different, but that's why we choose this option. So that's what I was kind of saying here with that remaining piece of that tweet. And then also here, the math worked and we had control of the money. So we invest $250 a month into this account as well. And according to compound interest calculators in the tool I have above, this should grow to approximately $120,000. And so when this tweet was sent, the gift tax was $15,000 for each spouse, which was $30,000, obviously, and that's subject to change. And now it's at $16,000 and $32,000. And she'll be able to use that money to fund the remaining portion of her college if needed, or what the goal of it really is for like a down payment for a home or even a car. And honestly, if all those things are taken care of, or if she doesn't want a car in her home or whatever it may be, she can choose whatever she wants to do responsibly with that money. Then third is the Roth IRA. So this is her own account, but obviously we're helping. She at 10 months did not decide to open a Roth IRA. So for all earned income, she will be able to begin her retirement. And that's incredible at literally 10 months old to have an IRA. I think it's worth about $970 she has in there. I think she's earned, it's obviously down, but I think she's earned almost $1,000 over a 10, 11 month span. So really, really good there. And like I say here, she's a budget dog baby model. And that's rare, like I was saying. So definitely think of different ways. Watch that YouTube video on creative side hustles to get your kids involved. If you have your own business, it's much easier, obviously. And at 7 years old, the IRS kind of deems most children like suitable for like reasonable jobs, like whether that be like cabinet filing or Excel planning or some computer task. Like that's pretty reasonable wages for those types of tasks. But any child earning income from a W-2 or 1099 can be invested in the IRA. So cutting grass, shoveling snow, reffing, whatever kids do, even at 16 years old, they might work at restaurants or whatever, lifeguard. So there's a lot of different ways. That's what we're doing. And like I said, I hope that provides some insight. So I'm going to show you specifically what we did with these tools here. So if I open this, first things first is, let's see if I can open Hyperlink. There we go. So this is the 529 deductions. So as you can see, if I go down to Kentucky, there's none. So use this tool, look at your state and see if it's on there. Secondly is let's go to the college cost calculator. So if I open this link, this is kind of how we started this process when we were planning. Fantastic tool. I love this tool. So we said Logan here, child's name, her current age was 1, let's just say, or I guess technically 0. Age of starting college was 18. Years attending college based on the standard, typical college, 4 years. And this was the public 4-year school in state number that Vanguard provides you. If you select cost or specific college, if you know exactly where they're going to go, you can search by state, search by name. You can also search here the type of college. So if it's a public 4-year school out of state, like I said, maybe a different school, or even private, you have the numbers, and Vanguard obviously is, searching that all the time. National cost, average cost data from the College Board. So then down here, we plan contribution. We just kind of kept whatever that is standard. And then we kept that monthly for now. We'll come back to this in a sec. We figure the current savings balance was 0 because we were just starting. Now the expected average rate of return, I did put 8%. They use 6% to be very conservative. I don't think there's anything wrong with a 6% return, because if you do use a target date fund, which a lot of parents do use a target date fund, 6% is probably very reasonable. I'm going to go a little bit more aggressive, hopefully get 8%, but that could bite me in the butt later. Percent of costs we plan to cover, we determined, remember, about 60% roughly. And then the rate of annual cost increase, Vanguard kind of has that for you, 5%. So if you go over here, as you saw me updating these factors, this output was over here updating. So right here with all this stuff right here, investing $100 per month, this gets us to about 60% of our goal, not 60% of the plan costs we plan to cover. So we realized, okay, we got to up this, and it tells you exactly you need to save an additional $138 a month here. So I know that, that's obviously $238 would get me to 100%. And so just to round up, we did 250, and that's where we got about 62% approximately. So that was our very, very first starting point of figuring out, hey, what are we going to do for her? Now, once we knew this number, we figured out what's our budget, what else do we have available outside of college. Is there a goal to save for? And we wanted to do that. So we made room, and we made another, we used the other tool, which is a compound interest calculator. And we kind of based it honestly off of what we just saw. So I knew $250 gets you pretty much. I mean, 141,000, assuming 8% returns, is pretty good. So what we did, we go here, let's start there, $250 at 18 years and rate of 8%. And I hit calculate, and it put us at like 112-ish, 120, 110. Every calculator is slightly off a little bit, but based on this input with this calculator, we had 112. So we figured, that's more than enough. Obviously, that's gracious. Between 100 and over here, $141,000 and approximately 112 here, based on 8% returns. So we figured that was a really, really solid plan. And so we came to that conclusion over here within our accounts. We figured, where's it at? It's right up here. The 529 in the brokerage account. Hey, if a kid's getting 120 approximately in both of these, they're going to be well off. And then on top of that, the Roth IRA, she's getting money from any earned income and funneling that through there. Pretty good deal all around. And we figured that was a pretty good, setup for an 18-year-old kid. Can't go wrong with that. I did not get that or even near that. I'm sure most people listening here did not get that. So that's how we kind of came to our conclusion. Again, there's obviously multiple accounts, like you can see, 529, Coverdell even, UGMA, you could go that route, Roth IRA, or brokerage. Some parents are just like, hey, I just want to do the brokerage and gift it to them as needed. And we're not really going to cover college. Very reasonable. Again, here are all the options, and I hope this helps you guys.